Next from Chicago, Governor Pat Quinn announces he's vetoed the salaries of lawmakers due to their failure to pass a comprehensive pension reform bill by the deadline he set for them. This runs about 15 minutes.
I've taken action on the very last bill of the budget sequence that we have for the coming fiscal year. There's about 6 or 7 different bills, and I acted on everyone until House Bill 214, which I acted upon this morning. This is the bill. I've made a line item veto in the bill suspending legislative salaries and stipends. Budgets express the priorities of the people, the values of the people, the important objectives of the people, and it's important that I think our budget reflect what the people of Illinois want. For the last 2 budget years, we've struggled to enact public pension reform, comprehensive reform, that's absolutely necessary in our state if our economy is going to realize its full potential. The legislature has had many opportunities in these 2 years to act. They have failed repeatedly to act and put a bill on my desk for comprehensive public pension reform. And I think it's important for the people of Illinois to know that the legislators should not get paid until they enact comprehensive public pension reform. I intend to inform the comptroller that I will not accept any salary in this fiscal year, in this budget, until we get comprehensive public pension reform. I think the same principle should apply to our legislators. This is an emergency. This is a crisis. This requires full attention of those who are elected to the General Assembly, who take an oath of office to do the right thing for the public. For too long, we've had legislative inertia, delay, and excuses on this paramount issue to the people of Illinois. I want to go through what we have done over the last several years to address this issue. It's a $100 billion issue when it comes to the liability of our pension system. But way back in 2009, in May, I established a pension modernization task force to address this issue. In 2010, despite intense opposition, I signed legislation after fighting for that legislation to provide pension reform for new hires, for new employees. In January of 2012, I convened a legislative pension working group working with my staff to come up with a comprehensive public pension reform. 3 months later, I proposed specific and comprehensive public pension reform to deal with the unfunded liability and to pass that legislation last year. To avoid credit deadline downgrades, I set deadline after deadline. The reason we set deadlines for the legislature to act is what the credit agencies were telling us over and over again: if you don't act on public pension reform and do it in a comprehensive way, then your credit will be downgraded. I told that to the members of the General Assembly over and over again. They blew through the deadlines, ignored those deadlines, and didn't put a bill on my desk. Up until now, the only ones who have had to pay when pension reform was not put on my desk by the General Assembly have been the taxpayers of Illinois. Taxpayers had to pay very recently higher interest cost on our bonds that will cost us $130 million in the course of that bond issue. Every day that the pension liability grows, taxpayers pay more. Up until now, legislators have not had to pay. But by my action today, we want to have an alarm bell for our legislators to understand that this is an emergency that demands their undivided attention. They cannot take time away and ignore this issue. They must have that alarm bell ringing in their ears. And the best way to do that is to hit them in the wallet. And I think it's important for the General Assembly to act, as I have on several times, call special sessions to to address this issue. We've released studies showing the dire impact of this pension crisis on our funding for education, that very soon our state will pay more in pension investments than we will in investing in our schools. And it's time for the legislature to act. I've met numerous times with legislative leaders and members to bring this subject home to them. We've launched an online campaign to make sure the public knew what the stakes are. We've told the legislature that we will veto any insufficient, inadequate pension reform proposals they come up with. It has to be comprehensive. It has to have 100% with respect to the investment. This has been a problem that has gone on in our state for decades. Previous governors, previous legislatures did not deal with it properly, did not squarely address it. And for 2 years, we've had this General Assembly fail to act. It is now time for the people of Illinois to see real action. And so by taking this action today, admittedly, this is a drastic measure, but I think it's absolutely necessary to get a wake-up call to the members of the General Assembly that the people of Illinois are tired of excuses, tired of delay. They're impatient with the fact that the taxpayers pay when the General Assembly doesn't do its pension reform job. And there is a principle as old as the Bible that you don't get your wages when the job isn't finished. The pension reform job in Illinois is not finished. And the General Assembly should take that biblical principle to heart and understand that when they get their pension reform job finished, they'll have my blessing on getting their pay. But I think it's important now for the people of Illinois to take a stand, the taxpayers to take a stand. We want action on this issue, and until that action happens, there will be no legislative pay, no legislative stipends. Glad to answer any questions.
Governor, some people think this is a stunt for politics for your campaign.
Well, I think I have tried everything. I've outlined all the things that I have done over the last several years to bring this issue to the attention of the General Assembly. Over and over again, they have failed to act. They have excuses every day for failure to act. I think at the beginning of a budget year, and that's what we're in, the fiscal year has just begun. This is a budget bill. We've had, over the last 2 years, budget bills that have been very squeezed by the fact that we've had such enormous pension obligations. To do it a third year, I thought, is not the right way. I could not in good conscience approve the paychecks of legislators if they didn't address squarely a pension reform measure that they could put on my desk. So I really feel this is the leverage that the taxpayers need in order to get this done.
Why victimize all the legislators when it's really two people, President Cullerton and Speaker Madigan, who can't get together on this?
Well, everyone who takes the oath of office on that day in January has a duty to the taxpayers. They don't have a duty to their legislative leaders. Their duty goes to the people who elected them. And I think it's important for the members of the General Assembly, both houses and both parties, to come together and work together to solve this problem, to put a bill on my desk that I can sign. I'm not going to sign a bill that's incomplete. We're not going to do something that's just for showbiz. We've got to get this problem solved. I think the only way to truly get the attention of the legislature, to wake them up, is to address their compensation. Because taxpayers have had to pay up to now all the time. Every time they've blown a deadline, the taxpayers pay. Now it's time for the legislature to understand that they'll have to pay until they act.
So, Governor, do you expect, any danger this will make matters worse?
No, I believe that the foremost challenge that our state has is the pension issue. We have to resolve that for more jobs, for our economy to grow. Everybody who's looked at the Illinois economy knows we have great strengths. We have great universities, great workers, great transportation, but this pension cloud is over the heads of all of us and over our economy, and we must act. And I think it's imperative for the General Assembly to wake up and get the job done for the people. More delay will only cause more harm to our economy.
Governor, do you expect that the Speaker or the Senate President should call the next special session to deal with pension reform, and do you dare them at that special session to override your veto here, your line item veto?
I think anyone who would, in the legislature, who would thumb their nose at the taxpayers is making a big mistake. I think the taxpayers are on my side here. They don't, when they do their jobs in private life, get paid before they get the job done. No. The people of Illinois, good and true, who work at jobs all across our state, they get paid when they do their job. When the number one job of the legislature is to address and resolve pension reform and put it on my desk, when they fail to do that over and over again, I think the people agree with me. They shouldn't be paid until they get the job done.
But do you expect the speaker to call the next special session?
I think it's time for all the legislators, the leaders and the legislators, to understand this is an emergency. This is a crisis. When taxpayers lose millions of dollars every day, that's a crisis in my book. For legislators, when they lose their pay, maybe it's a crisis for them, and they'll wake up and understand how important this is to the people of Illinois and the jobs of Illinois. So I think I've tried everything in the book to get their attention. We've tried special sessions, we've had working groups, we've had all kinds of studies, we've worked individually with legislators, we've worked with groups of legislators. But it's time now for the legislature to legislate, to put a bill on my desk that I can sign into law that will help the people, help the taxpayers, stem the tide. And that's really what this is all about today.
Will legislators really miss a pay period? Because my understanding, they get paid at the beginning of the month. So have they already been paid for the month of July? And when will this actually
Yeah.
happen?
Well, some years ago, 37 to be exact, in this month of July of 1976, a bill was signed to end advance pay for legislators. For 100 years, legislators in Illinois got their entire annual salary on the first day of office, before they did a single day's work. There was a statewide petition drive that gathered 635,158 signatures that I was part of that said that was a bad idea. The taxpayers, when they learned of this practice, said no to that. You don't get paid before you work. You have to do your job, then you get paid. So back in 1976, the law was changed, and the legislature no longer got advance pay, a whole year in advance. They had to get paid after, on a monthly basis after they work. And I think what I found in that petition drive that I was involved in, I signed the petition, I passed petitions, and we filed the petitions, and it got the legislature to wake up to realize the taxpayers who are working out there in Illinois are not happy with members of the General Assembly who aren't doing their jobs and who want to get paid.
Have they already been paid for July?
I don't know whether they've been paid for July. I think the checks come at the end of the month. They may have come at the end of. Let me just answer this question. In this budget here, there is no money to pay them. I've cut that out. All stipends of legislators and all salary of legislators is removed in this fiscal year. So with respect to this year, they're not going to get paid until they get the pension reform accomplished. Now, I have said, I want the comptroller to hold my paycheck, my salary, until we get it done. I think that's what the people want.
Two parts. A, have you checked, is this legal? Do you have the authority to do it? And B, are you not just simply setting another deadline for the end of this month when they're due to be paid? You'll get your money for this month if you give me a bill by
To me, the deadline should be tomorrow.
Well, but
Okay? The legislature's got to realize this is an emergency, a crisis. You know, it's interesting. When Commonwealth Edison sets a deadline for the legislature, they hop to it. When the National Rifle Association has a deadline for our legislature, they're right on it. Well, what about the taxpayers? What about the people who are having to work out there? They don't go to their boss and say, give me a paycheck before I get the big job done. No, you get paid after you get the big job done. And I think that principle should apply to the legislature.
You have the authority to do this.
The governor has the authority under our Constitution to have a line item veto on any appropriation. I've acted on this one. The purpose is very clear, to get public pension reform accomplished. Once that's done, they have my blessing in getting their pay and their stipends.
What about the constitutional provision in the legislative article that prohibits changing salaries of legislators within their term?
There's a case called Quinn versus Donewald that deals with that particular issue. It specifically mentions that the legislature has to adopt an appropriation.
How much pension reform, Governor, how much pension reform must they do in order to get paid? Would $10 billion of the savings of the $100 billion underfunding do it? What would do it?
No, we have to erase the liability. That's what I've said from day one. We have to make sure that the beneficiaries have a pension system that will pay their pensions. We have to make sure that we have in our state proper funding for the pensions on an ongoing basis, so we don't ever have this problem happen again. I didn't create the problem. I'm the first governor to properly pay the full pension amount. It's an enormous amount. It's over $6 billion. It's squeezing out our investment in schools, in education, our children. It's harming our public services for safety and for health. And so we have to act. And that's why I've acted today on behalf, I think, of the people of Illinois to get this mission before the General Assembly so they do their job.
Governor, on the other
Last
side,
question.
they do say that they have actuaries and accountants working to score the various proposals, and that obviously it's complicated. The public employee unions are vehemently fighting this, as you well know, and they say that they need time to score the different pieces. There's a lot of moving pieces. Is that just a bunch of baloney, do you think, a smoke screen? I mean, it seems to be compelling.
Okay, every day there's a new excuse. There's a new reason for delay. I really feel that it's important for their members of the General Assembly, every single one, not the leaders, everyone, to understand that this is a crisis. It's harming the people. It's hurting the taxpayers. And I think the only way to make that clear, that alarm ringing in the ears of legislators every day, is to do what I've done today.
Thank you very much.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.